Do you want to make money? Endless seams of coin pouring out of your pockets, your eye sockets, and every orifice that it should not even remotely contain? Then look no further. Crossout is not really the game for you in the slightest. But hey, let's see if we can fix that just a smidgen. So flipping is actually something I actually recommended not doing initially when you're first starting out in this game. In my old buy video way back then, although there's like 90% of people in here are actually because of that video. But I initially advised against it because flipping in itself, the nature of it, is that it's very high risk and it's potentially low reward sometimes for low volume items, and that actually may end up resulting in you not even turning a profit, even maybe losing some money in some cases. So just be warned here, just be warned. Flipping is going to be a risky business here, and if you lose some money, just remember, you only want to invest money that you're willing to lose here in this case. Now that being said, there's a variety of means and modes that you can actually go about doing flipping that can actually help reduce that risk to essentially zero, and you basically can guarantee turn a profit all the time, especially if you're doing high volume items that trade very frequently, and items that are basically guaranteed to get you profit back. So let's talk over a few things. So first things first, well, what is flipping? Well, flipping at its very simplest nature is simply buying something at a very cheap price and then selling it at a very high price, and then taking that difference and putting it into your pocket. And there's a variety of ways in which you can actually do that. Mainly, you'll just be doing it exclusively through the market here. And as you can see here, take an example here like this carjack here. You can see that it's being sold for 52, but you can actually buy it at 0.27 coins. So if you actually take that at 0.28 and sell it at 0.51, you'll actually be making a decent profit here at roughly around 0.17, 0.18, depending on the actual variations within the market, and you have to account for tax, which in this game tax is 10% of all market transactions. So if you actually did that a bunch of times here, you can actually continuously earn a little bit of profit every single time here. Now, that being said, there is a bit of a risk here. As you can see here, the sell orders and the buy orders are just magnitudes way disproportionate here. The buy order or the sell orders are 320, and the buy orders here are 108. So as you can see right now, it is definitely very saturated on the seller side here, which means it may actually be very competitive to actually sell a decent amount of carjacks here for a decent amount of price. But at the same time, too, a buy order of roughly around 100 is actually fairly high, and it's used in a variety of smaller blueprint crafting agents, so it's actually going to be bought fairly frequently here, so you actually can make a decent profit on this. But the issue is, with this many sell orders here, there's going to be a huge risk with people just saturating the market and constantly cutting you down and cutting you down and cutting you down until eventually there is zero profit to be had. And that is a very common thing to do, especially on higher tier items like legendary weapons. You wouldn't believe the issues I have with people constantly undercutting me, trying to sell my sparks. Like, dude, we've bid each other down like 30, 40 coins now. Oh my god. But that's one thing you always have to work out here. So if you see someone here constantly undercutting you by a couple of coins here, you just wait for them to sell their stuff here or leave your items overnight, and maybe you'll actually sell some money. But say if you're impatient with that, go ahead and take it off the market, make a little note. It's like, okay, I actually purchased it here, I gotta sell it here for a little bit of profit, and you just wait on that, because there will be periods in time in which you will be bid down all the way, so you will have to actually just wait for the price to come back. Another way you can actually make a decent amount of profit is just by doing very low volume items that have an insanely high profit. For example here, the material gold paint. Decent profit margin here of nearly 900 coins per item here, but as you can see here, the actual volume here is in the double digits. It's not even in the triple digits. It's 12 in total right now. 4 of them are actually being sold. So it's a very rare item here. However, if you can actually sell this thing, congratulations, you made a 900 gold profit. And you can continuously go down this list until you find something of decent volume here that you can actually make a profit with. But that's essentially what you can also do here, just try to do both ends here. But the big risk with doing something like this with very low volume is that it'll take you a very long time in order for you to actually rack up a sale on something like this. Not to mention, when it comes to something like this, these low volume items here, The main risk is that people who are actually also trying to sell will also constantly undercut you, kind of like what happens here, and eventually the profit may also disappear as well. So to be very conscious of that, especially with these high volumes items. So I generally recommend against doing these very low volume items. I pretty much guarantee doing the very low upfront cost but very high return on investment here, or the ROI. So these will guarantee you generally get you some profit here. They're going to be easy for the majority of you because you have very little upfront cash to do. So these, best things to do. But beyond that, there's also other things that you can actually look out for that may actually return you a decent amount of profit. Because this is only for the short term here, dealing with low volume and high volume items like this. This is only in the brief, shortest of terms, and with the profits actually staying like this. If you know anything about the changes of price over the 2-week period, 3-week period, or anything like that, you can actually flip for a decent amount of profit. So for example here, an event went off here called Raven's Path here, and if you know anything about events, events generally have pretty routine pathing situations. You'll know that the Christmas event comes out near Christmas, the Spring Mayhem comes out, as you guessed it, near spring, the Raven's Path comes directly after that, and the seasonal events always have items that you can craft there. So whenever you see an event going on here, you know that people are actually going to be consuming a metric butt ton of resources here. So what you can actually do is that you can slowly accumulate resources like this over the course of a season, and then just dump it all at this period of time. So as you can see here, you could have just picked up all of these coins, all of this resources here, and just dumped it immediately here for a huge profit here. So you could have bought this thing from like 2 coins per 10 and sold it for roughly 293 coins per 10. So you would have made yourself a very hefty sum of money if you bought metric butt tons of this. Because you also have to remember too, sure, you're limited on the amount of buy orders that you can place at any given time, because you can only place a grand total of 20 buy orders. Anything more than that, and you can't. It's simply capped out at 20. In fact, you can actually look here in the My Offer section. You can see you can only sell 20, you can only buy 20. But even with that limitation here, you can still rack up a decent chunk of resources here, especially if you ever do something like 1,000 or 100 here. You can find a whole host of resources here. Not to mention too, if you actually kind of micromanage this and you buy in bulk when the prices are lower, or you buy in small amounts when the price is lower as well per unit, you can actually make a decent amount of money there too. And you can see that the volume here is magnitudes higher for everything else. So flipping resources can actually be extremely profitable, but a bit time consuming to actually get started, and you have to sit on the investment for a very long time. So it's also just like sitting on items themselves for an extended duration for a couple of months at a time, where you can actually make a decent chunk of money here. And for example here, I actually have quite a few weapons here that I've been sitting on for a hot second here. So for an example here, the fuse here, I've actually been sitting on for a very long time, probably a couple of months now. But as you can see here, I picked them up when they were dirt cheap at 180 here. But as you can see now, they have jumped nearly 100 coins up there in the 270 region here. So if you know that any single part here has an exceptionally cheap price here, it actually may be worth it just to pick up these cheap items and then offload them and then actually get a little bit higher. And I've done this a bunch of times with the different weapons here. In fact, my most profitable venture here was actually my Lovely Dovely Aspects here, in which I actually picked up all of my aspects at roughly around the 1400 to 1450 range, and then I actually sold them here, as you can see, at roughly around the 1943 price here. So I got these things for a freaking nickel and made hundreds of coins in profit. So it can be very, very lucrative too. So sometimes a weird interaction between items and the events they actually originate from. So if you actually take a look here at something like the Raven's Path here, you can actually find that they have a variety of unique items here, such as the Leash, Arthur, Argus, Toadfish, Corvo, the Rifts, Contacts, Paints, Decors, 1,000 different items here that are unique to this event exclusively. And because of that, the prices themselves will actually change accordingly. So generally, because the event is actually around now, the price tends to dip a little bit. And because of that, you can actually pick up these things for pretty dang cheap, and then when the event ends, they generally shoot back up in price a little bit, because now the supply has been cut off entirely here. However, this is a bit of a risk here too, because you also have to remember, unless the item's actually desirable, it actually may be very difficult to actually flip them. So the shotgun here actually may be decently flippable because it actually may be somewhat desirable. However, weapons like the Arthorn, Argus, Corvo, and Toadfish, these are very, very, how I should say, niche and not very meta weapons. So the actual ability to sell these things is going to be very, very limited here, and you actually may not get a whole bunch here to actually work off. So you actually may not be able to flip these things in a decent amount of time, especially with the low tray orders for some of these items here. And so if you actually wanted to start actually accumulating items and actually start sitting on them to make some money, I'd recommend just simply coming over here to the nice lovely technology tree, clicking through these items, see which one has a very cheap price, and maybe consider picking up a few of them. Or you can just go to the marketplace here, go look at certain rarities here, go to the epic section, and literally just sort by what is the absolute cheapest item right now. And sometimes you actually may find, well, actually, wow, this thing is way below the common threshold, because you have to remember, things like epics, legendaries, specials, all have a certain range, and generally which they're profitable to craft when they're in meta season, and generally they only fall out of this range of craftability, profitability, when they actually become severely nerfed and everyone sells them off here. So for example, of the crickets here, because they're recently nerfed here, no one wants them anymore. They are not meta in the slightest. And because of that, you can actually pick up these things for relatively cheap here and then just flip them whenever they get buffed again later on down the line, because these things will likely get buffed. You can always count on the balancing of items like this changing over time, so you can always end up earning a little bit in the end. But the main risk for something doing like this is that, of course, a lot of the time some items may not rebound at all, or may not rebound for a very long time. So these are something that you kind of have to like just purchase and completely forget about, making like a little notepad somewhere on your desktop, and then just actually thinking about it maybe like 2, 5, 6 months down the line. But at the same time, it's also just making money when you already have money. Like if you already have like 10,000 coins sitting around, then by all means pick up a couple of crickets, wait for the patch to come around, congratulations, you just make yourself another couple hundred coins here. So in that sense, you need a heck of a lot of patience here. But if you're smart about it, you can actually make a decent amount of profit. Because like I said, that aspect thing, sure, it cost me 8,000 coins to actually get in there, but I made 1,000 coins in the end by selling 8 aspects at like over 200, 300 coin profitability per. So don't be afraid here to actually go ahead and use something like our lovely friend here, crossoutdatabase.com, if you actually want to gather some information as to the price history of an item. Because sometimes knowing where the item has been can actually be a future indication at where it's going to be at some point. So if you know an item that's historically sold for 380, but it's recently down here to like the 170, 200 region, then by all means snatch them up, because then that means as soon as they get buffed again, they're going to become meta again, very dominant, and you can easily flip that for a huge profit. Or if someone else just comes out with a wacky video that kind of showcases them, congratulations, interest in them may just spike too. So there's always opportunity there to know. So if you can't actually deduce it from the marketplace itself, by all means utilize those extra tools. If you're on console, then it's going to be kind of hard for you to know this. So if you actually just take the time to go through here, right click on all the items or whatever the equivalent is on the console marketplace to actually figure out what the price is for everything, they can actually make a decent chunk of change too. Another interesting quirk too is that you can actually flip items that actually only come from packs. Because the thing is that some packs do come on routinely, like the Fresh Blood pack that sells the elephant, which is right here. So you know that this thing actually comes around only with that pack. But because of that only comes around during the Spring Mayhem event, after that event ends, the price of this just immediately spikes afterwards here. And another item that's actually recently been introduced, and that may actually go away at some point, may become the half track, or the tank tracks, that were recently introduced, mainly because the cheap pack for it that actually contains the item will eventually stop being on sale, so the actual bar to entry to get this item will actually raise up and would subsequently raise the price for this. So it's actually just figuring out where the bottom is for an item like this, because it's been consistently going down now for a very long time. However, if you do time it right, you actually could potentially make money just flipping this item after the items themselves that contain it go away. And also another thing to note too, don't be afraid to actually sell things like decor items too, because decor items themselves, a lot of people do care about style, especially around holiday seasons and stuff like that. So you can actually make a decent amount of money here. So for example here, I actually purchased this thing at 120-ish when it was very niche and no one really wanted it here. But I could actually sell it for a decent amount of profit during the Christmas event because 1, people are now aware again of the cost to craft these items, but 2, the demand for them has really spiked up super high. So you can actually make a decent amount of money just selling decor items when the seasonality comes around for them, or just when they come in and out of styling fashions. But I think other than that, I think we'll call it good here, because right now I think you guys have plenty enough information here to chew over with. So, by all means, if there's any more questions you have about flipping, feel free to leave them down below. But on that, I want to thank you all guys for joining me this evening. If you've enjoyed what you've liked here, by all means, feel free to follow whatever platform is your favorite. We're on that YouTube, we're on that Twitch, we're on that TikTok now, surprisingly enough. I know, pretty dang cringe, but hey, it's wherever the fuck the people are for whatever reason. But beyond that too, if you also like this content, feel free to become a member down too. Subscriptions only start at $1. But on that, guys, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.